Hello friends. So today's video is going to be a new releases wrap up specifically for the month of April. And I read 4 new releases, all of which happen to be adult fantasy. 2 of them are sequels and then the other 2 are not. And so those 4 books would be Fevered Star, Hunger of the Gods, In a Garden Burning Gold, and Kaikeyi. I'll start with the 2 new releases. I did do a whole reading vlog dedicated to these, so if you've already watched that and you don't really want to hear me say pretty similar things, then I'll have that timestamp so you can skip ahead and I'll have the reading vlog linked. But for those of you that didn't watch that and want to hear some thoughts about these, for both of them, this is the sequel to Black Sun, this is the sequel to Shadow of the Gods. I did enjoy the first books in these series more than these sequels. I would say with Fevered Star, that's especially the case. The first book, Black Sun, is very fast paced. It has such an engrossing opening. Anybody that picks up that book, I feel like that opening is very disturbing, but very compelling. And I think that's something about this world that I really like, is there really isn't a set good and evil. There's a lot of gray. In Fevered Star, I do think you shift priority when it comes to the perspectives, which to some degree I enjoyed. I liked getting to hear more about especially one specific character. I liked getting to know more about them. However, that character is still not my favorite, and I missed the characters that I cared more about from book 1. And I also felt like the characters, it's not even just that they didn't get as much page time, but I felt like their personalities and just in general, their energy was dampened. And they kind of just existed to, well, one in particular existed to, I would say, kind of observe a lot of the time. And another character, the moments that we did get with them, I really liked. There were definitely themes of committing to something that perhaps does not give as much. It's like a return on investment is low because you put so much into something and you get so little out of it, which a lot of us can relate to. We just don't see very much of them, and I miss that. And then one character, I feel like they still were not as significant as the others. They just remained kind of somebody who you see sometimes, but they're not as significant. And at the end of the day, I felt like it was a lot of setting the stage for the third book. I know that's pretty common in second books. We could just sum it up by saying I think that this had middle book syndrome a little bit, kind of a bit. But the way we ended things, I'm now so intrigued for book 3. I didn't love this one though. I just missed getting to see characters interact like we had in book 1. And we just don't have very many characters in the same place. And again, we see a lot of people observing and people plotting, but very little of people interacting. So I didn't love this sequel, but I am excited for the next one. With Hunger of the Gods, I think that the setting is still absolutely fantastic. It is a Nordic-inspired setting, and very much there's a lot of nods to Norse mythology. There were some in here that I really appreciated seeing, and I still absolutely love the setting. In the first one, we follow 3 perspectives. I always enjoyed different perspectives at different times. There wasn't a set character that I thought, this is my favorite, I only like them, can we just get back to them? Because that can happen in multiple point of view stories. The downside for me was that I think some of the plot lines felt very similar. So one character continues to search, another character is now, I called it secondhand searching because somebody that they're aligned with is searching for someone, so they're kind of tagging along and searching for someone. It's a lot of traveling. And then on top of that, we do get 2 new perspectives, and I actually really liked the addition of these new perspectives. One of them, you very much are in their head, and they are very sniveling, almost stereotypically villainous, but the way that John Gwynne writes them, I thought was done very well. Myself and then also my friend Patrick have both said that it reminds us of Glokta from First Lost. So if you're a fan of Glokta, the way that John Gwynne approached this character, I thought was very similar. And I actually really enjoyed being in their head because how they would act outwardly was very different than what they have going on. They're kind of a suck up. The other new perspective, what I liked a lot about them is that they are not necessarily on the same side as our main perspectives from the first book, but I think there's a lot of morality to question about some of our main characters from book 1, and you see that questioning through this character. So even though they're against, I guess you could call them our heroes from the first book, I still understand why they're doing what they're doing. It's a very gray world that our characters live within. So it's kind of hard to be a good character. It's kind of hard to be heroic in a world that you almost have to take part in some of these terrible things that go on. So I did enjoy the addition of those perspectives. I did find the ending very engaging. There were some really satisfying moments. The way some of the arcs end in this book is fantastic, or I should say where they leave off I really liked, but I do think that it took a while to get to those places. With where we ended in book 1, I definitely thought some plot lines with our characters were going to collide a little bit more than they did, and they do affect each other, but I would say it's in subtle ways. There are side characters that our main characters interact with that I really enjoyed seeing kind of the brotherhood, sisterhood feeling come together, but the main perspectives themselves don't interact all that often, which was a little bit of a bummer for me just because I like when their worlds collide, but they don't collide very often. The action scenes continue to be great. There was one action scene in particular that I actually wish had lasted longer because it was very significant to one of the characters and their growth as a character and the progression of their plot line. I did enjoy it. Didn't enjoy it as much as book 1, like I said, partially due to some of the perspectives feeling similar. I do think it was a little long. I think it could have been trimmed just a tiny bit, but I am looking forward to that 3rd book. It is going to be a trilogy, so I'm like, really, can we get through it all in one more book? I guess we have to. Now on to the other 2 that are not sequels. One of them, Kaikeyi, is actually a debut, and then the other one I believe is a debut adult work. This author has written some other books. I just believe that they were young adult. I'll start with that one, In a Garden Burning Gold. I have not read their young adult works, but I do want to say that this does not lean young whatsoever, not because it's super explicit or anything, just the way that the author goes about the world building and the pacing. It is definitely kind of a slower read, so if you are a fan of their young adult works, just know this one might be a little bit more of a commitment. It's a little drier. You have to definitely take your time with it. And there is definitely a lot to pay attention to with one perspective in particular. So there are 2 main perspectives, and they are siblings. They live within a family that has 4 siblings and then their father. Their father is somebody who holds a great deal of power within this one kind of Greek-inspired fantasy land, and he has very interesting magic. And then from there, the siblings all have their own kind of magic, and if their father dies, then his power will be passed on to the oldest of the siblings, and then their powers kind of shift from there. But it's very important that their father maintains control, as there are other individuals who have similar powers within this area. There's only so many people that have this kind of power, and they definitely want to hold on to theirs. The 2 main perspectives that you're following are the 2 oldest children, and one of them in particular, she has this very tragic power that is also very significant to the progression of the seasons, the literal changing of the seasons. And so what is required of her is to marry someone, and then after a certain period of time she has to kill them, and that sacrifice is what results in the changing of the seasons. This is seen as something to be revered, so individuals actually offer themselves. Because of their magic, they have been living for a very long time, and they've essentially stopped aging, so this poor woman has had to do this time and time and time again. And part of the reason that people volunteer for this is because wherever they're from, that particular region is given certain perks with finances, with military, those kinds of things. So there is benefits beyond just the changing of the seasons that would result in why people would want to volunteer for this. And our main character at the beginning, her brother, wants her to go against their father's wishes because their father wants her to marry a specific individual. Her brother feels that their father is starting to lose his grasp on his power and his sanity, and so he's trying to manage everything while trying to ensure he doesn't undermine his own father and then make their family look weak. And so he is advising his sister to go against their father's wishes and actually marry someone different. I do think that the way her plotline progressed was more to my liking because the people that she interacts with, she's accustomed to them almost being grateful and respectful and in awe of who she is and her power. And this time around, that is not necessarily the welcoming embrace that she is accustomed to. And so I liked seeing her plotline quite a bit. I think it was much more character focused. Her brother's perspective, normally I love politicking, but I do think that in this particular story, the politicking is it's a little hard to follow because you don't really know the other players in the game. So he's trying to outmaneuver people, or he's trying to convince people to ally with him, or he's trying to hold leverage over certain people. And the significance of what he's doing, I understand the main idea of what he's doing, but it isn't as satisfying, I would say, as some other political plot lines I've read. That said, the way everything comes together at the end, I found to be very satisfying. Once it starts to move, it moves. It just takes a while to get there. So it was quite a slow start, but I felt like it was kind of a consistent upward trajectory. And then it sort of ends on a cliffhanger. And now I just gotta wait for the sequel. So I believe it's the first in a duology, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's only gonna be one additional book. But I did enjoy it. I did like it throughout. I found the magic very interesting. And like I said, I really enjoyed, Rhea is her name. I really enjoyed her perspective. And I did like seeing the relationship between the siblings. If you're somebody who likes family drama within your fantasy stories, I think that the way the author did it, I think they did a really good job. There's a lot to like about this, but I really do want to emphasize that if you're expecting this to read like a young adult book, because that's what you're used to from this author, it is adult, it is going to be slower going, and it's not exactly action-packed. Last, we have Kaikeyi. I really quick want to shout out This Story Ain't Over. If you haven't checked out her channel, she is lovely, but she has been shouting from the rooftops essentially about this book since before it got out because she read an arc, and I already was interested in this one, but I was especially excited because of her praise for it, and I completely agree. It deserves all the hype, all the love. I think this is one of the best debut fantasy books that I've read, and on top of that, it's one of my favorite books of the year that I've picked up. I'll have Jenny's channel linked down below if you'd like to check her out. She reads a wide range of different genres, age ranges. She's fantastic, so definitely check her out. If you have no idea what this story is about, it follows a character from Indian mythology, specifically that character being Kaikeyi, and she is somebody who has just the most tragic life. And you see her making so much effort to be a good person. If you like mythology stories, I can't recommend this one enough. This author handles a lot of very heavy topics and themes exceptionally well. I just think everything is done with such a great amount of nuance. She really shows so many different sides of everything, and I think that the family bonds that she shows, whether those are between this character and her spouse, this character and other women, the way that she shows it with this character and her siblings, her connection to her father, the longing for her mother that she didn't have, trying to be a mother herself. There's just so much to do with all of that this author, like I said, does exceptionally well. And also, I think they show the way that some people can have the best of intentions, but those whatever it is that they hold dear to them, their beliefs, it might end up keeping progress from being made. And if you're trying to progress in a society where certain beliefs are held very strongly to, you're going to have people going head to head, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this side is always bad, and it doesn't mean that this side is always right or that they've thought everything through. And I just think that the way the author did it, I can't praise it enough. I just think she handles everything so incredibly well. And on top of that, there's just so much magic and the creatures that are tied in and the references to their gods and goddesses. I just thought it was a fantastic book. I've read a few different mythology retellings at this point, and I think this one might be the best one I've picked up. We follow Kaikeyi from the time that she is a young girl. Her mother is absent in her life. The reasons why I don't want to spoil, but she is the only girl within her family, and it is a world where men have a lot more say, a lot more power, a lot more respect. But she feels tasked with filling her mother's role and trying to do what she can to help take care of her brothers and just be a dutiful daughter. And she discovers that she seems to have this ability to somewhat manipulate people. She can see these threads that represent her bonds with other individuals, and the colors and the look of these threads only she can see, and those different descriptors sort of relate to the kind of connection she has with people. And she's trying to navigate this, and when she's young, you see that she's just a kid, and maybe if she wants her friend to do something, she'll really send this thought through like, come with me to this thing. I really want to go to this thing. And there are consequences to doing this. Sometimes it ends up hurting the bond. Other times, if she's very subtle with something, she can get information that she wants. And when she's young, she's just a kid. She's not trying to be wicked or cruel. She's just experimenting and trying to figure out how to navigate this. And she's very curious. And sometimes she's like, wait, can I get away with this? And then, of course, as she gets older, she's realizing that there's some consequences to this beyond just you might end up harming a bond. There's also the fact that you're impacting somebody's free will to some degree, and so she tries not to use this to do harm. She tries to be very responsible in how she goes about this, and she also keeps it a secret from other people because she is afraid that this is perhaps against the beliefs that everybody shares. And then from there, you follow her into her adult life. You see her going from navigating her own family's court, if you will, to then having to try and get her footing elsewhere. And she's just so admirable. I just think that she is one of my favorite perspectives that I've ever followed. She truly is a good person. And I feel like nowadays it's very popular to have really gray and sometimes villainous perspectives, or just characters where everybody's an anti-hero. And in this story, she's just a person trying to do what she can to make the world a better place for as many people as possible. But even if you're not somebody who's typically into mythology and you're looking for a very good standalone story that has kind of epic scope because we cover a lot of years of this character's life, highly, highly recommend. That's it for some books that came out in April. If you've read those, definitely let me know your thoughts. If you're interested in them, I'll have purchase links in the description bar down below. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.